Friends, colleagues and listeners, quick announcement, a live face-to-face conference at long last. 5th to the 7th of September, it's going to be at the Grand Hyatt in Athens, and I'm talking about the Air Cargo Handling Logistics Conference, which also has Air Freight Pharma in association with Cool Chain, AGS, Airline Ground Services, in association with ASA Leadership Forum, and on top of that, we've got ULD Care. Des Fatanis is going to be the chairman, myself and Stan Rafe, co-moderators. Hard talk, direct questions, great panel, great speakers. Please join us, and all details are shown below in the link. Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are, another podcast, and what a great one we've got ahead of us. And may I say, one of the best dressed persons who's ever come on a podcast is here now, as professional as ever. And the person I'm talking about is Amar, who's the Chief Executive of Kale Logistics Solutions. So Amar, lovely to have you on board, sir.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's so nice to talk to you. And I really look forward to meeting you in Athens in a week's time.
Yeah, no, likewise. I think it's going to be a great conference. Lots of fantastic speakers and participants, and the location as well. So I think it all bodes well for a very successful session. Really looking forward to it. Absolutely. So, my friends, right, here we are today. Now, we've known each other quite a while, and I'm very familiar with your operation. But I've just got a few questions for you now, because I think now more than ever is a time for providers of operating systems like yourself to be the most influential of positive disruptors to the business. And you yourself have got a wonderful word in the title that we've just gone through, solutions. And when I say solutions, I'm talking about, the answers to certain problems, the definitive bridge between certain challenges, not just a vehicle to deliver necessary services. So the first question I've got for you is, if we talk about system platforms today, there's many to choose from, and many of them have got different focuses. So some with more focus on carriers, some on GHAs. Now, why and how can this influence the outcome of performance?
Absolutely, Chris. And you're absolutely right. We're spoiled for choice when it comes to systems and platforms. But, when you as a participant in the logistics value chain are looking at, what's the right solution for you, or what solution will give you the best outcome, then it is really important to understand the philosophy that has gone behind development of that solution. Because as you rightly said, there are solutions that are focused on ground handlers, there's solutions that are focused on carriers, and and there are solutions that were developed for carriers but are being positioned towards ground handlers, and vice versa, right? But what I always believe in is you should always look at somebody who's really focused on your business, understands your business as a service provider. Because if you're a GHA and if you're looking for a solution that has been developed for a carrier, some of those things like managing service level agreements with multiple carriers, managing invoices for multiple carriers based on the complex contracts that you will have, will never be, first of all, they may not be there as the part of the solution. Secondly, it may not be as evolved as you would look at as a ground handler. So I think it is very important to, before anybody chooses a solution for digitization of their business, it's important for them to really understand, what is their thoughts, whom is this solution created for, right? So I would always go in for a solution from a service provider who is focused on, where I come from as a GHA or as a carrier, and not really use something that was developed for a different participant but is positioned towards me. So I think, and as you said, as was in your question, the outcomes will be very different in terms of performance. You will not be able to optimally digitize your business if you go wrong with that choice. So
Amar, do you think, in all honesty now, okay, because I've been involved in quite a lot of carriers and GHAs, and the one thing that you look at is the sustainability element of the business, and continuity, contingency, and choices, whether it be in equipment or whether it be in systems, do you honestly think that people really know what they should be looking for? Because I think there's a lack of understanding there in many cases.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Chris, and you are not far from truth, right? And I'll be killed by my fellow service providers if I agree with you in totality, right? But I
Yeah,
have to be uh, honest with myself and honest with our industry as well, right? So there is a gap because a lot of these solutions got developed in conference rooms and laboratories, right? So very little, if any, input that kind of came in from the end user who has to use the system.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
trust me, we have made that mistake. I have no shame in accepting that the first platform that we'd ever built, where all of us MBA graduates, people from industry, we all sat in a conference room and said, this is what these people need, and they don't know what they need. So I think a solution which kind of takes in the views from the end users. I mean, you
yeah,
have to take different views, and then you have to synthesize those views to come up, because you will never have a system that works for everybody equally well, right? I mean, such things rarely exist in life, which work well for everybody, and everything ends up in harmony. But I think it's very important that the primary users of the system, one understands their pains, and you take the pain. So after committing that mistake with the first platform, from the second platform onwards, what we started doing is we never designed anything before we piloted it. So we built something small, we piloted it with a set of users, we got some very valuable inputs, because all of that we are doing, I mean, for all the intelligence that we claim to have, there is a lot of value of experience, and there's a lot of value of understanding how things happen on ground. So yes, there is a definite lack, but there are methods to address that lack.
yeah. No, I agree, and it's those methods to address the lack. I think that needs to be more transparent, because what I found is you've got people who love to talk systems, IT. I mean, it's hugely. You said they're MBAs, etc. But it's almost like a PhD level, wanting to talk to an O level or an A level of user. And the level of user, all they want to do is they want to have things that help them do more with less, help them become more agile, cover certain risk issues that are known for them. And then also even things like audits and validation and verification exercises.
Absolutely.
It's how you have those things more convenient for people to make them speed through. And there's one thing, I'll tell you what it is, Amar. The one thing that gets me, which I can never, ever, ever understand, right? Whenever you check in to a hotel, it's relatively easy. But my God, when you check out, it's all but easy. It seems to take forever. And I think to myself, why on earth has somebody not sorted that out for a little bit of speed? So the next question I've got for you is, why do so many organizations insist on doing things differently when at the end of the day, the industry that we're in is pretty standard? And, if people follow the ICHM, which I think is a very simplistic document that explains the whole process, why, if it's so similar, why do organizations still want things to be so different? And then if they accepted that it was based off of a spine of consistency, transparency, and best practice, then where do you then add the USPs to market and offer special benefits?
No, this is one of the most difficult questions that I've ever answered in an interview, right, or in a chat. But you know what, Chris? What I believe is, obviously, each organization would like to have a competitive edge, and hence and therefore they would like to do things slightly differently from the others. But here's where things go wrong. And I've been in this industry for around 3 decades now, right? And what I believe is, when you're trying to digitize or you're trying to set up a process, right?
Yeah.
Please be aware of the fact that you are part of this larger ecosystem. So if you're a GHA, there are freight forwarders that are dealing with you, the customs brokers, the truckers that are dealing with you, there are airlines that are dealing with you. And likewise, if you're a carrier, you're dealing with the forwarders, and the same forwarders are dealing with 20 other carriers, right? So if you try to create, as you rightly said, when the processes are fairly standardized, if you want to create a differentiator, great, everyone should try and do that. But just imagine if your differentiator becomes additional work, additional burden,
Yep.
and
Yep.
irritant, from for the other. Because if you're a freight forwarder in London and you've got your staff dealing with 20 airlines, and for each airline, if he has to learn a new process, then that defeats the whole purpose. And that's where we when we decided to create this kind of community platforms, we'll talk about that later during the conversations. That's one of the objectives. So you can have the differentiators in your systems, in your processes that you want, but you have to be mindful of the fact that you're part of the community. When you're creating this, you don't cause inconvenience to others, then it doesn't stay a differentiator, it becomes an irritant for
Yep.
the
Yep.
other person in the supply chain, right? So I think being differentiated is good, but there are several opportunities where you can differentiate yourself without affecting the convenience of somebody who is not part of your organization, right? And those kind of differentiators would definitely help you much better than those who cause disruption at the other end. So I guess benefits of having such let's say variations in processes are there, but they have to be weighed in the context of the broader ecosystem of logistics
Yeah,
and
yeah,
supply.
which I accept, Amar, but again, I just think now, there comes a cycle and there comes a time when things can be done from a logical perspective. And one of the things that I feel now across lots of boundaries and industries even is the basics are not being provided to the consumer or the customer. And I think now a USP is a system that can provide the basics that's expected, that anybody that's been in the industry for a while would say, okay, brilliant. Now they're able to fulfill the basics in a nice, agile, simple fashion. That in itself, I feel, is a USP.
USP,
And
interesting thought.
and
Yeah.
then when you look at how you then add on, so you've got this, obviously APIs, you've got common capability and the ease of consolidation. It's almost like that. Then there should be like a systems app warehouse whereby the basic spine of each system has already been fulfilled. People are aware of it, and it's a great solid foundation. Then if somebody wants to do something specific for their customer base or part of their product portfolio, then they can add like a Lego system emphasis on a particular DNA of their customer options or their customer or their own business. And I think that's where the individuality and the benefit can come, provided you've already met that basic spinal foundation of expectation within the system.
No, absolutely. And this is a brilliant concept. It's like a super app, an app of apps, right? Or,
Yeah, yeah,
as you rightly said, the spinal system. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the basics have to be provided. The basics have to be provided considering the end users and, their needs and how can they do their job much better. But with APIs and common capabilities, Chris, we and when as Kale we decided to enter the logistics segment, we just did a broad level analysis. This industry is fascinating. There are I mean, we're talking about 8% of world's GDP that goes into
yeah.
logistics. It's huge. And when we studied the logistics as an industry, and I won't restrict myself to just one mode of transport because that's changing, and
Exactly. Yep.
we all can see that, right? There are 41 segments of this industry, 41. Okay, starting with importer, exporter, freight forwarder, customs broker, truckers. I'm not going to name all 41 of those, but across the board, there are 41 segments, right? And any solution that you want to provide to this industry, any digitization solution that you want to provide to this industry, if you don't think of other stakeholders in the supply chain, and you don't kind of cater to it into your solution, then you're never going to be that optimal solution for the industry, right? And it doesn't mean everybody has to use the same solution. As you rightly said, you can have your spinal cord in place, but you can build small satellites around that spinal cord, and that's how the solution will meet requirements of this industry. And APIs, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning of your question, right? Any solution worth its salt that's going to be put to the industry together, if it doesn't have capability to interface,
Yep.
to talk to other solutions in the ecosystem, it has no future.
Yep.
It has no future.
No, I
Absolutely.
agree. I agree, Amar. And in my mind's eye, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a system. I'm looking at a system that can show how many of those 41 segments it can support, interact with, endorse, or improve. And then whether or not then you use a Lego API system to get there is a different issue. But the ones that would obviously be the most popular would be the ones that had the majority of the interfaces for those 41 segments, or the primary segments that a customer needed. So with that in mind, also, should systems not also link to things that are always causing problems for the business, which is where are the risk buttons within the system that are based on good solid data? Where are the areas that management need to focus on proactively based on trend analysis? And also easier than expected validation of key service points, whether that be through validation of audit and checklists to verification of final outcomes. Because what I'm seeing as well, the industry is becoming far too good now at playing blame bingo. And it's almost a science of how to answer questions based around failure to make failure sound as a normal part of service, which it isn't.
You are absolutely right, my friend. So let me tell you, first of all, this whole journey of systems within our air cargo industry, or for that matter, most of the logistics industry, has been from a nice to have to a necessary evil to a business driver, right? So this has been the journey, right? And when you talk about this journey, what is important to understand is the whole ethos, the whole fundamental on which the system should be developed for a future is not to report a failure, but to prevent a failure, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's extremely important, as you rightly said, as long as even an electronic register, if it gathers data, you can put it in Excel, and you can do a lot of things in Excel itself, right? But if you really want to have a system, if you're a handler, if you get a system that tells you that, look, you have an SLA of 3 hours for this shipment, and you nobody has even touched this shipment, and it's just 1 hour remaining. You need to send an alert, first of all, to the user who was supposed to deal with the shipment. If he doesn't respond in next 15-20 minutes, then an alert should go to the supervisor. If there's a sales lead that has come in, if nobody is acted on it for 10 days, then there has to be an alert to the supervisor, right? Going on the 11th day or whatever. I mean, you can configure that, right? So a system that prevents failure rather than reporting failure is something that is very important. I'll also tell you about, you said, the risk factors, right?
Yep.
So for an airport cargo handler or for an airport itself, if they want to understand what kind of infrastructure are they going to need, right? They need all of that data, how the perishable volumes are growing, and they're
Yep.
going to need
Yep.
more refrigerators or more carpet cranes because more carpets are moving out of the terminal now. So absolutely, so all of these systems for future will have to do this kind of, risk analysis, identify the black spots in the system, and also, look at, addressing service failures. So don't report it in the MIS at the end of the month that we failed SLAs on 1,000 shipments.
100%, Amar. That is the most frustrating thing in the world, because anybody can tell you what last week's weather was like.
Absolutely. Well said.
100% agreed with you. Now, you mentioned there about data, right? Now, the one thing that came out of COVID, which was so positive, was data sharing. Okay, and it proved that the industry was able to, to join hands together and make those relevant changes happen, and happen quickly and effectively. Now, with the Bring Back Better approach, the speed of demand has caught, it seems, everybody cold, and we're returning to a lack of data sharing and open transparency. And like I said earlier, everybody's pulling out their blame bingo card. Now, that's so wrong, so wrong. And now, just to get back to some nice, solid basics that help the customer, okay, because at the end of the day, in the eye of the customer, it's a simple business.
Absolutely.
Why on earth do we not have a very, very effective across all systems data sharing, which then starts to focus on where the real bottlenecks are, where the risks are, where the competency shortfalls are, because that's not going to go away now. We're going to enter into a period of, I personally think, a good couple of years, maybe longer, where the emphasis on the success or not of businesses is going to be how effectively companies are able to keep their people, train their people, and make their people fall in love with the business again. And one of the ways to do that is by having a nice system that's logical, that people can see makes sense, and they understand the storyline of the objective of what they're doing, and it makes them believe better. And if that system is able to enhance upskilling, cross-skilling, and multi-skilling, okay, then it's going to be a winner.
Absolutely. So Chris, this is a very important subject that you approached upon now, data sharing, right? And that's exactly, I mean, at Kale Logistics, when we entered this logistics segment, we realized that no matter what is the description of the problem, it falls into, three major categories, right? Number one, congestion. When you're moving shipments, you're experiencing congestion at the terminals, ports, airports, everywhere. Number two, the excessive, paperwork, which results in, efficiency issues and sustainability issues, right?
Yeah.
And number three, the opaqueness of the whole supply chain, because there are so many stakeholders from exporter to importer. You don't have one single place where you can track the shipment. And when you can't do that, my father used to work for a manufacturing company. When you don't have this kind of information, what you do is end up stacking more inventory in the supply chain, and that increases your product cost, and it just has a bigger macroeconomic impact, right? So let me just to elaborate the importance of data sharing, right? Chris, there are staggering statistics. Even today, an air cargo shipment is accompanied by 30 types of documents and 124 copies of paper. So commercial invoice, packing list, letter of instruction, master arrival, house survey bill, export declaration, import declaration, so on. And the list just goes on. And what's the most funny part? The most funny part is most of the data is the same. Shipper name and address, consignee name and address, number of packages, flight number, blah, blah, blah.
Color of ink.
So absolutely. So if just imagine if the exporter could share that data, an exporter generates 69% of the data that's required on those 124 copies. If they're able to share that with a freight forwarder is able to reuse that, for an airline, that is going to solve a lot of problem, because the statistics even today is that air cargo, for which people pay 8 to 10 times, right, the premium, it stays on ground waiting for paperwork for 85% of the total transportation time. Only 15% of the time it's actually moving, which is the value-adding activity for which people pay, right? So I guess when people start exchanging data, right, a lot of unnecessary documentation is going to go away. I mean, a documentation required for regulatory purposes, and I mean, we've done some calculation, and that's about 20% of the total documentation. So maybe 20 copies out of those, 124 copies, those will stay. But you know what? The other 100 copies can go away. And you know what is the sustainability impact? I mean, at one airport, we just reduced 10 copies of paper per shipment, Chris. 10 copies of paper. It's a 1 million ton airport, 1.3 million shipments, 10 copies, 13 million copies of paper annually, tantamount to 1,000 trees, okay, per airport per year. Talk about
which is incentive enough, or it should be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So that, and then reasons for congestion. We identified there are 4 reasons of congestion. First, the handlers do not know how many trucks to expect between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock tomorrow. They can't plan their operations,
Yeah.
right? It's all a blind game. A lot of paperwork still gets done, and when the paperwork is happening, 20 other trucks come and jam the queue. Third is, everything comes in bunches. So, truck flow is not streamlined. And fourth is trucks for whom cargo is not ready are still coming and standing in the queue. They're called simple reasons, no rocket science. You address that through data sharing. When you create community platforms, when you create common platforms, that's when you start sharing the data. Data moves before the shipment moves to the next participant. No waiting time for that, and it is transformational. And that's exactly what we experienced when we developed our community platforms for airports and ports, and it helped the whole community deal with this excessive paperwork, deal with this congestion, deal with the inefficiency, and the benefits of sustainability we just spoke about. So
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I've got something to throw at you, Emma, because I know how passionate you are and engaged with these issues, but just for the time, just to touch the starter, because we could go on for this for days, but just something I want to throw at you now. Okay, control posts, remote control posts, right? Which all systems have been involved in and putting into place. Now, I've actually done it myself, where I've sat in the cab with some of the people who've asked me to do so, right? So you're going in, you get your documentation, the person, and there's a couple of lanes to go through. Person in front of you has a major query. There's no individual, there's no human being to talk to. You talk into a system. You're stuck then in the queue, and then the queue on your right, there people are flying through it. Okay, so there's so much good technology, but God forbid that technology doesn't work immediately or doesn't have a common sense or a logic. It has a more negative impact than ever. And the thing that you mentioned there about community systems, I believe now airports now can make a huge difference if they start looking after their ecosystem, and they have some sort of service delivery or performance charter that's the KPI or the DNA or whatever you want to call it of that airport, whereby every party operating in, around, or through that airport or a port has to comply with those particular criteria. Almost like, when you're online and you're going through a questionnaire, and if you don't fill the field out properly, it stops you.
Yeah.
There should almost be those sort of controls which stops people coming into that airport before they're supposed to, stops people just hanging around and blocking up systems, stops people delivering way early, and also sends out reminders that if their shipments are not collected as per the product specification, it would be transferred to an off-airport release point where there would be additional charges.
No, this is exactly what I support, Chris. Absolutely, the airport is a neutral entity. If an airline were to do that, or if a large forwarder were to do that, it will not be used by their competitors. But airports, by very nature, are neutral.
Yep.
And a very significant, anything that has to go internationally out of that city has to pass through that airport. So if you digitize that, if they take on this mantle, this role, then they can make a huge difference. Chris, our industry won't be the same that it was for so many years if the airports were to wake up, take the baton in their hand, say that, okay, everything goes through my control point. If I digitize, if I make sure that everybody is so I absolutely agree with you. And that's exactly how the change is brought. Somebody has to take the baton, and if that person is neutral, that people can listen to, if it doesn't have a conflict of interest with other stakeholders, then it works. Otherwise, it's very difficult to make these things work, right? So
yeah, 100%. And if they do it and it's open and there's enough time, lead time, then everybody's got the same chance, same opportunity. And I just think it would make it so much easier. And then there's other things that can come from that, Amar, like, pooling of equipment, even pooling of specialist resource, lots of things to make people want to get back into a career at their local airport because they're proud of what the airport's doing and that the airport is leading. Because COVID proved one thing: carriers can come in, carriers can go out, but people who are based at an airport, they stay.
Absolutely, absolutely, Chris. Absolutely, I completely agree.
Yeah. Now, there's something else which I also think the business should be used for, and the platforms is as an effective training tool, and not just as a reference to God knows how many unnecessary words, lines, pages, and even manuals that are repeated, plagiarized, added to. So that could actually also be a help. But just to wrap it up, because I know Salem will be in the background saying, "Jeds, you've got your time up now." But just to wrap it up now, okay, if you, Amar, if you went to sleep tonight and you woke up tomorrow morning and you had the opportunity to change things, what would you change and why? And this is now not technically correct, Amar, but if you could just influence one major change that would make all of this so much easier and so much more effective, what would that change be?
Chris, and this is exactly what we discussed just now. I would ask God to give this divine intervention to all those airports and ports who are sitting on, so much potential of, efficiency, right? They can unlock so much of, efficiency out of their facilities. And they're sitting just, so far apart from the mainstream cargo business, sitting like a landlord doing nothing. I would get some divine intervention into them and tell them that this is your chance to make difference to an industry that has been craving for transformation. If you can make it happen, if you can get the ecosystem together, the way cargo is handled in your facilities will never be the same again. So I would do that, Chris. I would do that.
There you go. Maybe we can title that now, Airports. You have the divine intervention to deliver efficiency. Why don't you do it?
Absolutely.
No, but seriously, Amar, it's do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, if you just have a whiteboard and you just stop people from saying too many words, and you just keep bringing it back to a common denominator. So everything that they want to put on the board has to pass those 3 or 5 common denominators. Okay, I've done that with people, and they find it so difficult to start with, but when they actually focus on it, and they do take those, common denominators every single time before they're able to put something on the board, it does come back down then to very, very simple issues. And I think as well, too many people focus on what the future is going to bring. And the one thing this last 5 years has taught us all, nobody knows what the future is going to bring.
Exactly.
And now, God forbid, we've got energy crisis, we've got wars, we've got all sorts of political to-in and fro-in. So far better, make today and some of the tomorrows more efficient and simple.
Absolutely.
And then perhaps the future's got a better chance.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I just missed that part on training. And I know you're doing some phenomenal work in training and competence building, but as good as a system you can develop, if it is not used the way it is supposed to be used, it will create more irritants than it will be helpful. Sorry.
It will, Amar, but what I found is too many organizations are set up for tick box exercise.
Exactly.
Okay, and for administration and memory rather than competency. And the market is too competitive, the market is too big, and the market is too aggressive for the wrong reasons. And if you don't build on competency, which means you've got to test harder. You've got to have a retention of knowledge element in that competency. You've got to have an annual service in that competency, just like you MOT or you give a service to your car. You've got to have those elements in it, and those elements are hard work. Whereas everything else is a matter of, yes, we do this. Yes, we've got this. Yes, this is in place. Tick, tick, tick. Accreditations, whether it's IOSA, ISAGO, ISO, whatever it is, there's such a huge push to administrative tick boxing that it's unhealthy and it's not right. And what's worse, the employees don't understand it. And also LMS, there's a need for, for certain things to be online, etc. But there's an over-reliance. And then you even get your own tick box exercise at the end of it. If you get it wrong, you do it again. And if you get that wrong, you do it again, and you do it again until you get it right. Well, would you go to a heart specialist who had the same principle? No.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
and we just got to be now, focus a lot more now on common sense and longevity, continuity, contingency, but most important, making the user go at last, at
Absolutely.
last. You know, maybe that should be the name of a new system, huh? At last.
Absolutely.
All together. Yeah. I've got to work something out there. Yeah. Yeah. At last. That's what I think. Yeah. But listen, Amar, it's always a pleasure, my friend. And I know you're trying to change things for the positive in so many ways. So I wish you a lot of success. And there's plenty of ways now that things can change. I think it's an incredible opportunity, an incredible time now.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. I mean, no better time than now. We started 10 years back, but as you rightly said, now is the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and when we can make it happen together,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Super.
Well, sir, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, really appreciated. And also for being the best turned out guest we've got on a bank holiday here in the UK. So well done, sir.
So thank you so much, Chris. And my sincere apologies. I didn't know about the bank holiday.
No. Amar, listen, my grandfather always said, he said, no matter where you go in life, he said, it's always better to be overdressed than underdressed. He says, there's no way up. He said, there's no way up. He said, once you've already hit the bottom. So well done. You've certainly set the standards.
Thank you so much, brother. All right. Thank you.